Republican Senate candidate Roy Moore is still adamantly denying allegations of sexual misconduct with minors decades ago, but calls are growing for him to step out of the race from within his own party. The latest now from Jonathan Sari, live from Gadsden, Alabama. Jonathan.
Yeah, at this point, Roy Moore has no intention to step out of the race, but according to filings with the Federal Election Commission, the NRSC, that is the Republican Party's Senate campaign arm, has ended its fundraising agreement with Moore. Meanwhile, the candidate has been issuing a written statement today responding to some of the allegations against him. He says, quote, "I have never provided alcohol to minors, and I have never engaged in sexual misconduct. As a father of a daughter and a grandfather of 5 granddaughters, I condemn the actions of any man who engages in sexual misconduct, not just against minors, but against any woman." In that statement, of course, Roy Moore responding to allegations in that Washington Post article in which a woman claims that Moore initiated sexual advances towards her back in 1979 when she was only 14 years old. Moore goes on to deny the allegations in his statement today, saying, quote, "As a former judge and administrator of the law, I take the protection of our innocent as one of my most sacred callings. False allegations are gravely serious and will have profound consequence on those who are truly harassed or molested. I strongly urge the Washington Post and everyone involved to tell the truth." Now, Moore enjoys many loyal supporters in this state, many conservative Christians who say that Moore himself is a good Christian and they trust what he says, and they don't put a lot of faith in the allegations against him. But Democrat-leaning voters see this as a real opportunity to elect their Democrat candidate, Doug Jones. No easy task in a statewide election in this solidly red state. But as we have all learned over the past 24 hours, this is no typical election in Alabama. Back to you.
All right, thanks, Jonathan. The White House has responded to the scandal.
Like most Americans, the president believes that we cannot allow a mere allegation, in this case one from many years ago, to destroy a person's life. However, the president also believes that if these allegations are true, Judge Moore will do the right thing and step aside.
Steve Bannon, one of Moore's staunchest supporters, is still standing by him.
The Bezos, Amazon, Washington Post that dropped that dime on Donald Trump is the same Bezos, Amazon, Washington Post that dropped the dime this afternoon on Judge Roy Moore. Now, is that a coincidence? That's what I mean when I say opposition party, right? It's purely part of the apparatus of the Democratic Party. They don't make any bones about it. By the way, I don't mind it. I'll call them out every day.
Okay, so Greg, with this development, it seems some are doubling down, standing by their candidate, despite the fact that there's reporting on the other side saying that there is misconduct and a number of allegations of sexual assault.
Yeah, people say don't rush to judgment. You don't have that luxury here. You've got a month. And this isn't a court of law. There aren't criminal charges. So you can make a judgment. You can make a judgment. And you can say that somebody dropped the dime, and you could say it's a hit piece, but it could also be true. And if you're judging by that article, there is evidence there. So it can be a hit piece. It can be a smear, but it could also be true. It can be both. And you don't have the luxury of saying, you actually have to make a judgment. You are forced to make a judgment. I sympathize with the voters of Alabama because they probably sense that this is an attack, but it can be an attack and it can be true. So you have to acknowledge that this might be a hit job, but it also might be legitimately true, and that's going to force you to make a decision. You actually do have to rush to judgment because you only have a month.
Okay. Well, Dana, so yes, there obviously is the whole expediencies of the situation because the election is coming up. There isn't a lot of time to pivot or make decisions one way or the other and have what we talked about yesterday, full due process to determine, in fact, what did happen. Where do they go from here? And if you're advising, how do you tell them to handle it in the communication?
Well, a hit piece would indicate that they were trying, that it was the Democrats trying to hurt Roy Moore in this case. Mm-hmm. in this situation, in particular, let's talk about the woman who's 53 now. She was 14 years old when she says that this happened. She's on the record with the Washington Post. She never told her story before. Why? Because like many women, she's afraid to come out. She's afraid that they would trash her reputation. She's afraid that they would say all sorts of terrible things about her and her children, and it would affect her livelihood. She's a Trump voter. Okay, so I don't understand the hit piece aspect of this. Like, so something came out, you could make a judgment that you don't care.
No, I'm saying hit piece. I'm saying it's negative to him, but it's still true. That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying. I'm not complaining.
No, I know. I'm saying. I'm talking about what Bannon was saying.
Okay.
That he's saying that this is a hit piece. That the Washington Post makes this up out of whole cloth, or that this is Doug Jones, the Democrat, saying, "Oh, look what we've got. We've held on to this until 3 weeks before the election, and then we're letting it go." By all accounts, that's not what happened. And these were not Democrats that were trying to hurt Roy Moore. And so I think that everybody just needs to take a step back. And what I'm saying is, you could be an Alabama voter and decide you don't care if something happened in 1979. That is fine. It doesn't mean, though, that she's a liar.
Right.
And if that's your decision, I mean, that's your choice. You'll have to go for it. But I do think the NRSC was right to pull back its money.
Okay, so Jesse, where do we take this from here? Because obviously this is something dividing the party, dividing supporters. It's a pivotal election. It's a key seat, and now here we are.
I said it last night. I'll say it again right now. He should resign immediately because the mere stench of the allegation incapacitates him. I could be wrong about the whole story. I'm usually not, so I'm going to trust my gut on this one. The truth is,
at least
also,
you're modest.
Now, Democratic politicians and Democratic voters, let's be honest, have a very lower threshold for public shame and inappropriate behavior. If you look at Bill Clinton, survived rape allegations, survived an affair in the Oval Office. Marion Barry smoked crack on camera, was reelected in D.C. Robert Byrd said the N-word
How about
on
Donald
television.
Trump?
Let me get there. Well, don't jump ahead. And we have the mayor of Seattle, who is a Democrat, who was accused of sleeping with underage male prostitutes 5 times, still held on until his own nephew accused him of molesting him. So usually with Republicans, you know, Larry Craig taps his foot in the stall of the men's room. He's gone. Foley flirting with the pages in the Capitol.
Hastert.
He's gone. Yeah, Aaron Schock, the congressman, redecorated his office too lavishly. That was enough for him to resign. And, you know, there's a host of other guys, you know, accused of graft and seedy behavior. But Republicans usually at the whiff of any controversy, especially involving a woman, run away. Now, Moore, I mean, this guy, to hold strong on an allegation of child molestation is within his character, though, because he fought to the bitter end against same-sex marriage and fought to the bitter end when it came to keeping the 10 Commandments there. So I just think this guy sticks it out. I honestly think he's going to do it, and it's just going to be radioactive. He was already radioactive when it came to comments about Muslims and transgender and gay people. This increases it tenfold. I just don't see it getting any better.
Yeah,
Well, I despise Roy Moore's politics. What Jesse mentioned about gay marriage, what he called Islam a gutter religion. He one of the founders of the birther movement and his treatment of blacks over the years. I really want, in many ways, to see him defeated. That leads me to tend to believe the accuser, but I worry that it's not my prejudice that gives credibility to a claim, a charge that is so old that ordinarily you would have it barred by a statute of limitations. The reason we have statutes of limitations is that witnesses' memories fade. They become subject to a persuasion. They convince themselves that something happened. So generally speaking, I demand contemporaneous corroboration. Did she tell anyone at the time that this supposed horrendous action
like
happened?
A fresh complaint, we say.
And it appears from the Washington Post article that she did tell a couple of girlfriends, and it does appear that these reporters went and corroborated the dates that her mother was supposedly in court when she was sitting in the car where Judge Moore, then Attorney Moore, could have access to her to solicit her. I tend to believe that. I think
so that's corroborative.
I think it is corroborative.
Persuasive.
So, but I still believe her, and I think that a lot of voters do. But I think that Alabama it's a quirky place in the extent that You know, they could say, screw you, America, you're just picking on deep South state. You don't like conservatives. You don't like Christians. You're trying to screw our guy who supports the Ten Commandments and so forth. So I think that the Republicans are in a death spiral. I think Roy Moore stays, and I think that he loses to the Democrats.
Yeah, I think the one thing, too, to what Jesse was bringing up, sex scandals no party line. And if the left only, the left will always want to focus on more. And God knows we got a lot of mileage out of Anthony Weiner. So we can't do that. We have to be equal. We have to be equally opportunistic about being disgusted. We should be disgusted by our side, and they should be disgusted by their side. And we should just be disgusted together instead of cherry picking the types of people we're going to be disgusted by. Because, I mean,
there's plenty of it to go around.
There's plenty of it, as we're learning. Every day we are over, like I said yesterday, it's raining bad men. And we have to admit that it's everywhere.
But look how much times have changed since Bill Clinton. Imagine if you had those series of accusers against the president and his alleged conduct in the Oval Office today. He would be run out of town. The Senate would have easily convicted him. He would have been thrown out of office.
Really?
Times have changed enormously.
I don't know. I mean, look at this situation. Plus, if we immediately believe the allegations against people from Hollywood, then you have to ask yourself, then why wouldn't you believe this woman who's on the record?
I do understand the people from Alabama who see it as the Washington Post versus Roy Moore. Who do I believe? And I think a lot of people don't believe the Washington Post just because of their track record of bias against conservatives, and they're going to dig in no matter what. And that's the reality of the situation
their fellow citizen who
in the
voted
media
for Trump?
today.
But what about their fellow citizen who voted for Trump?
Yeah,
they're not believing her
a lot of people hear things and they think fake news automatically.
We're all everybody
And we're out
here
of time.
is everybody on the planet is a victim of their own confirmation bias. If you want him to be innocent, you want him to win, you're going to think that way. If you think the Washington Post is biased, you're going to think that way. But if you think, oh my, this is a cultural conservative who was hiding under this illusion of being religious in order to prey on women, you're going to believe that too. That we all have to lose this confirmation bias and admit that bad stuff is there's plenty to go around.